Well, that's me. I'm Harm. I work as an engineer for Schuberg Philis. I have 3 kids and I do a lot of volunteering, hence my talk on community. I'm not as big as a chef crack or Microsoft PowerShell crack is as Steve is, but I do a lot in organizing stuff. One of the things I do is hacker camps. What I also do, hence my shirt, is Lego Mindstorms education, teaching kids how to program. And in Holland they also started the Hour of Code, which means that as a volunteer you can code with kids on a Friday morning for 1 hour and using Scratch, so it's really easy for them. What I also do when I have some time left is organize DevOps Days Amsterdam. Next year will be hopefully the 4th time. And I help people run several meetup groups. And one of them is the Chef meetup group in Amsterdam. And I'm mostly harmless. So we didn't use Chef all the time at Schuberg Philis. And we started off with actually no automation at all. We started off with just logging onto boxes, doing our stuff, and the man who started it all at Schuberg is Ian Southam. We used CF Engine for basic stuff, user automation, and we still use Nagios a lot, and we deployed Nagios with CF Engine. Don't do that anymore, and several application settings. One of the things that Ian spent a lot of time on is our add client, which is basically a provisioning system to get an operating system on a box. But that was long time ago, back in 2002, 2003. What we did use, I forgot to say that, CF Engine is of course not great on Windows, or of course I say, CF Engine 1 and 2 were not, and we used that back then. And for that we used BMC. It was pretty good at automating, and I think Anush is here somewhere there, colleague of mine. He has quite some headaches from that, because we have different customers. So what we wanted to do is share that. Where should I not stand? What we want to do is share our knowledge and instead of documenting our knowledge into Word documents and wikis, we still use wikis though, is to put it in a configuration management tool like CF Engine or BMC. Thing is, this did not scale very well over multiple customers. We could not do multi-tenancy, and we, it was quite expensive as well. It's not open source. So that's when we started, and actually the guy who is one of the instigators of getting Chef is in the back of the room. That's Funs, he's not on this picture. We did a shootout between Puppet, CF Engine 3 and Blade Logic and Chef 1. And we have 2 beautiful Sanders here and they do a lot in the community. As a matter of fact, we wanted to have Sander here, but he was working on a Chef 12 upgrade yesterday, which went fine, but you never know, so he couldn't make it to get here. They are maintainers of a lot of cookbooks, and they also built a tool called Chef Guard, which basically freezes cookbooks so that when you deploy or redeploy, you will get the same cookbooks on your server. Sander is also the maintainer of the Nagios cookbook, because nobody maintained it. Well, nobody maintained it, he took it over from someone. I encourage, because there are still in the supermarket of Chef cookbooks that need to be adopted, or you can work on cookbooks yourself. At Schuberg, we also try to share. So what we think is a best practice, we share on GitHub and also in the supermarket of Chef. You can find them because we put SBP in front of it. So if the community, do I say this correctly? Well, I probably won't. If we will alter some of the cookbooks because we think there's a better practice to be found, and we will upload that either to our own private GitHub, and if we think it's good for the community, we will also upload it to the Chef supermarket. What are we working on now? Besides Chef at Schuberg Philis and a lot of contribution there, we also commit to Terraform. As a matter of fact, Sander van Harmelen wrote a plugin for Terraform to work with Chef. There's a lot of security going on at our company. One of my colleagues, Glenn, together with his brother, and we saw that in the earlier presentation as well, you have to include security in the beginning of your process and not at the end, because if you find security bugs at the end, it's very expensive to solve problems. He built that open security knowledge framework. It's an OWASP project, well, for developers, really easy to find where the loopholes are and what you can do to your code to make it more secure. And besides that, we're also a big committer on CloudStack because we use CloudStack, and yeah, we do, not OpenStack. Message here is, if you want to get involved with Chef and with community, adopt a cookbook or try to improve cookbooks that are out there. It will not only help you, but you will help a community, and it will make a cookbook more secure, or it will make installing applications for other people more easy. And by doing that, other people have more time to improve other things. So by sharing, you make, well, in the end, you make the world a little bit better. But that's the philosophy of Schuberg. We also have like a policy. You can commit to open source. So everything we do, we try to do open source unless it is really private to one of our customers. So what is the next steps for Schuberg? Because we try to automate a lot of stuff. We automate builds for CloudStack. We automate installations for our customers. So we have a lot of engineers, and what is the next steps? Well, this is a little walk down history lane. The first automation acknowledged is this rusty thing, which is actually yeah, how do you call it? A planetary. Somebody has to help me with this word. It's like it's used for celestial navigation, and it shows the where the planets are. The modern version is, of course, night sky on your Apple, on your iPhone. But this is what used by the Greek back in then. So they automated that already like more than 2,000 years ago. And this is actually the programming a weave machine. And you can see, so this automation is well, it's navigation. It's nothing to do with computers. This weaving machine, programming a weaving machine, nothing to do with computers. So where do I want to go with this? This was the inspiration for Charles Babbage for his differential machine and the analytical machine. As you all might know, Ada Lovelace. Does anybody know her? Do most of you know her? She's considered writing the first programming language. But I don't see a lot of women here because it's all men here, almost all men. And where I want to go is diversity by bringing in more from the outside world of IT to become better in what we do. And what you see here is the first IBM machine before it was IBM. And this is, of course, Alan Turing's machine, actually a rebuild to crack the Enigma code. Alan Turing, as you might know, was homosexual, and he was, when he lived, heavily, how do you say that? No, he wasn't prosecuted, but and actually it's believed that he took his life. They're not sure, but he was found dead with quite a lot of arsenic in his body. And actually the UK government apologized for that only a few years ago, in 2009. So that's like more than 50 years after the fact. And this man was a brilliant man, helped us win the war, and he had a terrible life. I wouldn't say Margaret had a terrible life. She's I think, a very, how do you call it, gevierd, help me, celebrated woman in IT. And she's considered the founder of software development and made the Apollo 13 mission as one of the participators in that successful. But I mean, back in the 60s, it was far more common to have women in our industry than it is now, which is strange because if you look at how many people are getting their degree, women are getting more degrees than men, and they get higher grades. So what is it in our industry that makes women not want to work here, apparently? And so I want to give you a thought for tomorrow for the open spaces, because how can we change this? I was at the Berlin DevOps Days. There was a journalist speaking, woman journalist. And if you look at our industry, it's all white, male, hetero. And apparently we like that. And I think we need to change that. I had long conversations with Ken from ThoughtWorks, great company, and they managed to get, instead of the somewhere between the 5 and 10%, they managed to get 30% of their tech workers are women, and that's because they looked outside of the tech industry to find these women. And I would say that there's something for us to do as well when you go back home to your company, is find people outside of your company and be more inclusive to women. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you, I guess all of you know the DevOps survey. In that you can read that 57% of women in the tech industry leave tech industry after or before 40. Apparently it's a harsh industry for women to work in, and I think we should change that. I mean, we are changing that, it's getting better, but we're not there. As Nathan already mentioned, the code of conduct, we talked about that briefly last night. It's a pity that we need to have it, but I think you need to have it to protect people and to be inclusive. And also, and that's what we did at Schuberg, we had, there's like the Geek Girl dinner, there's the Women in Tech, actively invite those meetup groups to your company to have the conversation on how to make life better for women in your company. So it's okay to be awesome. Try to be different, try to be inclusive in that sense, because I think men between each other think, well, no, that's not for me. But I think it's apparent that you need to think about this. What can you change to make that better? So, and that's my thought of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Harm. We do have a few minutes for some questions. Anyone have some questions or a response to Harm?
So I actually have maybe a little bit more of a personal question.
Okay.
I've noticed that you work with kids.
Yes.
I would really actually like to know, because you probably have newcomers, you know, in your company coming from universities, and you know you have to train them and stuff like that. So, what's the difference between like bringing kids up to speed versus bringing adults up to speed?
Kids is far more fun. Well, the thing is, and that's also what you see when you do this teaching, is that you see that boys and girls, they're the same. They have the same interest. They can do the same. The thing is, though, that all the technical Lego stuff is really for boys, but like 30-40% girls are also coming to these programming classes, and they do better. The thing is only, our culture says that it's for boys. And that's what we learn, which is stupid, because it's not. But yeah, even Lego does that. But what is the difference between teaching kids and adults? Yeah, I find that a very difficult question. I think that kids are more nieuwsgierig. Curious. Yeah, more curious. Dank je, Ivo. So I think that's also a difference. Kids are far more curious, so stay curious. So who is gonna actively do something about this and invite like the girl geek dinner to their office, or nobody? Yeah.
Already am doing things.
Yeah.
So I guess speaking of diversity too, what about training and apprenticeships and things like that, or junior developers or sysadmins? So like my company, we've taken on our first DevOps apprentice, so someone who knew virtually nothing about computers, and even barely command line experience and all that, and trying to bring them into this sort of world. And a similar thing would help open the door to not just, I guess, kids, but also adults who want to change careers. What about that?
Yeah, my company is not doing that at the moment, but as Steve has a different opinion than Chef, I have a different opinion as Schuberg. I think you should do that, or as people you should do it, because we do take on interns, but it could be more widely done within our company, which, well, I'm actively fighting for to get that done, but it's a long battle.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
One thought that I kind of wanted to add to, just to augment that question a little bit about training interns and things like that, that Etsy have found is that when you're bringing people on, like interns or recent graduates, but who haven't followed what you might call the typical entry path to IT, like, you know, computer science degrees and things like that, is you sometimes need to be careful about how you interview people, because, like you said, the industry is very biased towards the, you know, kind of white hetero male way of entering the industry. Yeah. And you tend to find when people come from a lot of different backgrounds, they, for example, if they come from an economically less advantaged background, they perhaps didn't have computers when they were growing up, so they don't have any code on GitHub. or they potentially weren't able to go to university, so they worked a bunch of different jobs and they were always interested in computing, but they never really had that break sort of thing. So you often find you kind of have to you effectively can end up with unintentionally biased interview criteria where you think people aren't qualified to do the job because they didn't have the same advantages you did that got you to what you consider qualified. So that's worth bearing in mind as well, I think.
Yep.
I'd actually like to add something to your point there, because I think that's quite interesting you mentioned that. So I work at Schuberg Philis as well, and we did a survey amongst the people that work for us, and we found that more than half of our engineers don't have a higher education. And those are actually very talented people. So it's very funny that you mention it, because people usually look at it and go like, oh, you need to have studied computer science or some other shit. But the real problem is that doesn't matter. If you're smart, you're smart. It doesn't matter. There's no degree that will make you smarter than someone else. That's kind of what we found. It's pretty interesting.
Thank you. So at 7 Digital, we are doing a similar thing, it sounds like, to Etsy, where we take on people that don't come from a particularly computing background and put them through a training scheme, which we call the Tech Academy, to get them up to speed as one of our developers in our tech team. I'd like to ask you, actually, what's your interview criteria for choosing someone you think would be suitable?
It varies on position. So we've recently started, literally in the last couple of years, because we had the resources to kind of bring them up to speed properly. We've started hiring junior ops engineers, which in our case means literally no experience at all, first job in IT. So we've essentially, and we did have to confront this ourselves, that our interviewing questions were geared towards people who had a very kind of traditional entry path into the industry. And we've had to start, we've actually, brought in, coaches and people from other industries to help us with this. And we've had to start thinking about things, well, how do we, because what we really care about at the end of the day, when we're hiring a junior ops engineer, isn't, how many of the tar flags have you memorized? It's how do you do when you're trying to solve a problem you haven't confronted before. That's what we really care about. So we've had to try and, the things we particularly care about with junior ops engineers especially are things like their approach to problem solving, their approach to dealing with other people, because they're going to be dealing with, for example, a lot of people who are approaching them in a less than positive state of mind because something's broken. And so we have to think about how do we mentor people in that approach and make sure that they're bringing things to the table that we feel we can develop. We can develop them technically. You can teach people technical skills really easily, but you can't teach them problem solving as easily. So you have to try and look at different ways of how you get people to talk about their approach to problem solving without bringing those subconscious biases in by testing them on things like, can you design an n-tiered caching architecture, which many people can't do.
One more.
One more?
I have a question. You just mentioned like there is a high dropout rate of women in our industry. How much,
after
like,
third.
what you think is the fundamental reason? Is it the rate of change in our technology is very hard to keep up, or it's totally cultural biasness that women need to do something else and guys need to play with the gadgets and technologies?
I think partly society problem, though our industry is way behind other industries. I think other industries are considering family life more. I find the experiment in Scandinavia to do like a 6-hour workday very interesting, because apparently you are only 6 hours productive in a day. So you can work 10 hours, but those 10 hours will not be productive, but you cannot be with your family, you can't get the kids out of school. Yeah, I don't know. I think we need to change and be more about family life. Also at our company, I mean, we take pride in working 50 hours, but it's meaningless. And we cannot expect from everyone to do that. So we have to, as a company, change in that. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I don't know if, you mean the high, well, the thing is, I don't work a lot with women in my company. I only know women who are not working at my company. Did we? No, there's not a high exit rate. I mean, people tend to stay at Schuberg. So we have a healthy culture, but we're not so healthy apparently towards women to come and work for us.
No, I just wanted to know fundamental reason we can.
Partly, it's a big society problem as well. I think, apparently we think that tech jobs are for boys. I mean, Funs and I, we are running around at a university in Amsterdam and not high school, but university. And what we see there is that 90% of the people studying are men. So so that means only 10% of that potential you can hire, which is not enough for the whole industry, I think. So there's something wrong already there.
All right. Well, thank you, Harm.
Okay. Thank you.